Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Alrighty, so my setup has been out in the sun for about 15 minutes, and you can see that my flat is starting to break down, so I'm going to make a new one. And I will show you how I make my flats. You want to find an area on the sun that is relatively clean from solar activity. And that will give you the best flats. I like to open up my histogram so that the white and the blacks are slammed to their respective sides. I lower my hump to get it so that it's over the 150, which is usually 1.5 milliseconds. That's close enough. I then turn off my existing flat, turn off the negative, and now I need to defocus. And I usually like to go into defocus. And I like going in at least 2,000 steps. And what that does is it blurs out, diffuses. It's like a diffusion mask where any surface detail is now so out of focus that you just basically get the sun as your light source. And you can see that these stripes are from the quark. I've got some boogers here and here. And now if I just capture and then enable, you'll see they go away. But what I also want to do is remake, because I'm not going to use these flats. And then I'll just capture 20 frames that I can then take into Serial Player and break them out into individual frames, load those into Photoshop to make a master flat, which I'll use in AutoStacker. So now that that's done, I can go and up my exposure back to where it was, which was 2 milliseconds. I can now turn on my flat, and you can see how everything goes away. This is not a perfect solution, plenty good enough for what we're doing here. This isn't rocket science. Okay, so now I'm going to go back out those 2,000 steps. And you can see that the surface detail is starting to reappear. And I'm going to go to those 2 sunspots that you saw when we first got going here. These guys right here. And I'm going to focus on them first. And that'll get me very close to where I want to be. Sometimes it's easier to focus when I'm in negative. Did I up my exposure? Yes, I did. There we go. So now I have enough contrast in here that I can really probably get pretty close with the focusing. No, that isn't too bad. Yeah, that little string, that little filament is looking good. Now what you'll see is every now and then the gray scale image kind of gets a funny looking color. That's actually the smoke that I still have. Even though I don't have as much, I still have smoke. This is like the best day I've had since who knows when. So I'm going to go with what I've got. So I think what we'll do is we'll go around the block. This hump, usually have two humps with solar. The one on the left is this region. You'll see that there's a very diffuse little layer, and I don't know what they call it. I call it the spiky region. And then it's also where your prominences are. So that's what this hump is. This hump is your face, the disc, or the face. So I can skew, with my quark, I can skew the temperature setting so that I can see enough of the prominences while I'm going around, or I can just move the histogram white point into this region here, and now all I'm going to get is the prominences. And you can just barely see there's a little fainter black area here. This is where those little spikies are. And that's not a technical term, that's a Jeff term. Sorry. I'm not a scientist, nor do I want to be one. Nothing against the profession. I do this because I enjoy it. So these, now if you ever want to find out if these are actually on the very close to the limb, all I have to do is move my white point back and I can see that these are on the other side of the limb. They are not on any of the surface that we can see. So let's go around the block, see what we got. There's another one there. It's really not very many big ones that I've been seeing today. And that you can just barely make out, especially when it's moving, that your eye will catch some of those little spikies. Scupules? I can't remember what they are. Don't quote me on that. There's one here. Very faint. And what you'll notice also is that as you get more of space into your image, the higher this peak gets, because that's black under normal conditions. So if I turn off the negative space is black, that's this. And then there's generally a little bit of a gap. So if I move this out of the way, there's generally a little bit of a gap that you can use. So if I just want to see surface detail and do something like this, you can do that too. And that, the reason why I like to, you want to get, let me restart here. The reason why I do what I do is I'm trying to expand the histogram as wide as I can. So that means that I want max bit depth, which for this camera is 12 bits. This is a color camera, so I'm in grayscale mode, because that's going to help It's not going to increase the resolution, but it will make all of the pixels the same color, which helps. If I turn this to color, it looks like crap. I just prefer the black and white better. I'm, of course, in binning 1. I don't want to bin. I'm maxing out this camera. This camera is fairly old. It's 7, 8 years old. And it's giving me 30 frames a second, full frame. And the frame size is, it's not very big. It's like 1920 by 1200. And then, because your histogram is so stretched out, you can then use the black point and the white point to pick regions that you want to see. And you don't have to mess with your gain, excuse me, or your exposure. You can just use the histogram. Because you've already set it, you've already set up the gain and your exposure to get what you need. So let's continue to go around the block. There we go. Oh, there's a nice one. That's very faint. Now, there was a huge sunspot that Perseverance rover on Mars saw, and I believe this is it coming around the bend. So it'll probably be visible sometime tomorrow or Saturday. And this is all the activity from this area. So let's try a negative view and see what we get. Yeah, I believe this is the sunspot. So we will know more tomorrow or Saturday as to how big this sucker is, because if Perseverance rover on Mars could see a sunspot, it's got to be pretty big. And it was flaring quite a bit. So here's another one right here. And maybe a little bit of a one there. Not much though. Here's one. It's very diffuse. Right in there. Oops. There's one on the top of the world here. Looks like a fountain. Tiny one there. Lots of little ones, nothing too big. Now, as this was moving, you could see that, I'll go back up, you could see how it, if you don't really stare at it, you kind of do like a persistence of vision type thing, where you're not looking at it, you're looking off to the side at it. You can see those spikies. They really come to the fore when you look at it that way. So that's what the sun looks like as far as prominences go. So my guess is this stuff is actually moving because it's a loop. Looks like it starts here and goes all the way to here. So maybe we'll just hang here a minute and see if we can see anything. Sometimes you get lucky. I think the other view is better for this because it's so faint. Now, at this zoom level, my little hand here is about the size of Earth. So that's, we'll just go like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll say 5 Earths tall. Big structures on the moon, or what is this? The sun. Very big. It looks like it's losing some of its intensity, so maybe I think we probably just missed it when I just started. It was not there when I first started. But you can see this area is fading away. So let's check out some of the surface stuff. One of these days I'll figure out these buttons. Not. So there's a nice filament here. Got a spot here, and a spot here, and there is a little bit of a filament that's jumping between either side of this spot. Right in there. Let's see if I can get the focus any better. I think that's about it, which for me is pretty good. The sun is on its way back down at this latitude, so as fall starts to deepen, the sun is getting much lower, so I'm always going to be looking through more atmosphere now. I'm at almost 43 degrees, and I think the sun, what is the sun? I don't have my phone. The sun's got to be maybe 70 degrees, maybe less at this time of the day, because it's actually going down, and it goes down fast. By 7:30 it's gone here now. And by, I'd say 8:30, 8:45, it's actually dark enough to start doing some nighttime stuff. And when they do the time change, that moves up an hour. So you can see I do have some Newton rings here, but I don't worry about them mainly because the software, if I do any post-processing on stuff I capture, the software takes those out, so I don't really mess around with Newton rings. It's not like I do outreach. But in a way I am. I do get quite a few people that watch. Cool structure right there. When I was, the first scope I bought back in the 70s, you could only dream of doing solar, excuse me, solar like this. I mean, my whole solar setup for the mount, because it's a Pegasus NYX 101 harmonic drive mount, so it doesn't need counterweights. I got the tripod extenders and a carbon fiber tripod. So the mount, the extension tubes, and the tripod are under 20 pounds. Beautiful. I have an AR 102 that I bought on Astromart for under $300. It's about $300 with shipping. And then I bought a Daystar cork. And between those three items, I'm basically into, I think the mount was 3,000, the scope was 300, so that's 33, and the cork was 1,400 maybe. I think I got it on sale, so it might have been lower. It's been a while. So for under $5,000, I'm in to solar, hydrogen alpha solar, fairly cheap, considering the cost of some of the other gear that's out there. And that's with, now 5,000 seems like a lot, but that's everything. That's the mount, that's the scope, that's the HA filter. If you already have a mount and you have a refractor of any type, preferably under 120 millimeters, all you would need to do would be to buy a cork, and those are, like I said, 1,400-ish, give or take, 1,250 depending on what you're looking for. Now I have what I believe is the chrominance version, which is surface detail only. Wow, that's pretty actually clean. Shouldn't have said anything. Now, what I would like to show you is the reason I love negative view is if you look at this area, and this area, I'm going to turn negative off, and look at how flat the image gets. I mean, you can't tell those are off the surface. It's a good looking view. But as soon as you go into negative mode, that stuff just pops off the surface. That's a good looking spot. And his friend. And when I don't shoot, so if I'm going to process data for solar, I go into normal mode. I'll extend out my histogram like so, and then I'll make my movies because I want the image to be flat. I use IMPPG, and I'll use its histogram to pull out the areas or regions of interest using IMPPG's histogram. And I like IMPPG's sharpening routines. For solar, it's, I think, the best thing going. So I'll take my movies and run them through AutoStacker, and then AutoStacker gives me my image that I bring into IMPPG. And then when I'm done with IMPPG, the image goes into Photoshop, where I do what I do in Photoshop and then colorize the image. And it's a pretty quick workflow. And one of the other things that you'll notice is, and I think the one that's on the left side I'll go over to, you can see that the sunspot is lower as it gets closer to the limb. The sun is so big that as these things start to rotate towards the limb, that you can actually see that because their sunspots are colder, they sit lower in the atmosphere than the rest of the surface does. So let's go to the other side, and I think it shows better over there on the sunspot that's over here. Yeah. Oh, that's new. But you can see that actually looks lower than the rest of the surface. And that's what you see is what you get. Let's take a peek at this guy. Oh, we got a little activity right there. Let me just move it a little bit. That's new right here. Very faint stuff. And again, if you want to see if this stuff is coming from the surface, which it isn't, you just have to move the histogram slider, the white point, to the right, and that will start to bring the surface back, detail back. And if this stuff was on the surface in here, you would actually see that there would be a filament that is like going from here and then it extends out past the surface. Interesting. So this is the sun on Thursday, August 31st. So on that happy note, I think I've been on for about a half hour. I'm going to try to go out tonight. It's supposed to be good tonight. And if I do, I will do a live stream of tonight's session. So stop by if you want, and we'll catch you later. Thanks for stopping. See ya.